We have been supporting and implementing projects in education since 1997. And one of the core convictions that IFA has is that education and arts education and education should be a meaningful experience for all children. And we believe in the conviction of the transformative role that arts education can play in inculcating a lifelong quest for learning. So that's something that IFA has been focused since the very beginning, and our core focus has been teachers, artists, students, and working with government school teachers to look at how can we build curriculum, build art interventions from the lived experiences of the children and the teachers, and how can we connect to the local art forms. So for the past more than 29 years, we've been focusing on this area, and today we're happy to have cultural practitioners, arts organizations, artists, teachers from across our program to come together to discuss not just what we've been doing, best practices, but also what could be the next paths for us in arts education. So we're hoping with our keynote addresses and through the panel discussions that we can have a rich 3 days of exploring what arts education can look like for the next 5 to 6 years. I also just want to say, and Krishna will tell you a little bit more about the program, but we have some of our arts education teachers and artists here. We have workshops, we have exhibitions of their sharing, there are spotlights. Please do spend the time outside of the panel to getting to know IFA and our whole IFA community and engaging with the work they do. So welcome, and welcome to these 3 days. Over to you.
Thank you, Marita. I'm Krishna, look after arts education along with another program officer we have. Radhika Bharadwaj is also one of the senior program officer with us. Yes. Yeah. This is very, the concept of this workshop, conference is like a great learning for us also. Before that, we tried to reach out the education sector or artists and the educators at the regional level. Last 2 years, we tried we got experience from conducting conference at Kalburgi, that's representing Karnataka, and the coastal Karnataka, and including Kasaragod, Kerala, where we find a lot of common narratives and synergy, cultural synergy, and the rich resources, which are always being ignored by the mainstream academic system. When we talk about mainstream, again, it's not the questioning the system what we have. A lot of possibilities are there, but how we can enrich or how we can engage, keeping that curriculum, keeping that guidelines how to create a curriculum. But how, the important is how we can bring the local resources. As Menaka mentioned, the living culture of every student should be a pedagogical tool in the classroom. Then, who is the owner of the process? Whether community, whether school, or whether teacher, or just a curriculum will lead a student at a very joyful manner. So, India Foundation for Arts, like continuously working to connect all these very important dots. Sometimes it misses, sometimes it connects, or sometimes it creates some more exploration possibilities with us. And this, especially with organizing this conference at Hyderabad, has a lot of learnings, possible learnings for IFA and possible learnings for arts work and arts education. So thinking that, we started working out how we can trace it out with the different modes, how we can reach. So as mentioned, we have panel discussion with a general idea like how this art education will sustain for the 21st century challenges. Because every parent, every school, and every organization, even administration, government policies are always encouraging maths and science as your basic requirement. But the other word, the parallel word, or you can say where the joyful life is there, we are talking about the humanities and the social science. There are two mainstreams now. So our organization believes bringing the social science as the major concept, and also in this sustainable world, the challenging of the 21st century. I don't know how we are going to address a lot of environmental issues, or social imbalance, or hatred politics. So that is going to happen for the next 100 years. So this conference we comes with some kind of advocacy which can address or which can show some possibilities for the next at least 2-3 decades, how we can change our learning possibilities in the classroom teaching pattern. So when you look at our program schedules, like we have a handholding workshop with the journaling nature. Again, we are connecting immediate world. And then we have design making magazine. Again, you are expressing yourself with the media. Apart from that, we have performance one of a group from Kalburgi. And we are very happy that alumni, most of the group members are alumni for the first project. So again, we talk about the sustainability, how art programs will sustain. In this context, the 21st century challenges in the sustainability will be addressed by 3-4 panelists and the moderator, and that will be introduced later. And the second challenge will take about beyond curriculum, how we can take our classroom into the window outside the world. It's not the classroom with the walls, how we can peep outside the classroom, because we always say don't watch outside, but outside world is so strong and very encouraging. So we are taking that. Some teachers may say it's he's not obedient, but that disobedient itself is a big basic encouragement for us. So we are making that disobedience into a learning possibility. So the last one is we'll take about the social structure now we are getting. How it is getting disturbed with the students, teachers, even the parents, small villages, micro level, lot of discussions are happening, how we can proceed. So all these 3 days, we take this journey and hear from you, hear from the panelists, and IFA will make that as our learning or the advocacy for the education. Hopefully, a lot of discussion, you all involved, you come up with your voice, that's what we believe. Please voice about not only arts education, voice about education, what we need for the next, at least for 2 or 3 decades. That is a missing factor. And we have very good handholding workshop for the school students. 3-4 schools are representing with their students, where they are bringing our project coordinators also joining with us now. So they conduct TLM, teaching and learning modules, where art integrated activity happen in the 3 galleries. So when you have free time, please visit. Have fun. You have any experience, add your words with the participants and tell your stories with them. So throughout the day, they will be available for our handholding workshop. So these are the small process we are coming with. Just to conclude, because the important session, keynote address will start. Just to conclude, the 12th century, we always recognize, we all remember the Anubhava Mandapa, where Basavanna, Makka Mahadevi, or Alama Prabhu, or so many, more than 600 Sharanas, they came up with their voice. We never acknowledged in the mainstream, but 12th century social reformation started in this Kannada. That is the biggest contribution for literature world or even to the community. Hopefully, the same kind of discourse happen in this Anubhava Mandapa, what we have today. So not just remembering, just recalling up, staying in the nostalgic world, romanticizing all those learnings is not going to give any kind of solution. So this 3 days discussions, discourse, arguments, and all will bring a very good platform for the next arts education system. Thank you so much. And immediately I'll take this opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker, KN Ganeshiah. Initially I didn't mention, KN Ganeshiah is also an environmentalist. Worked with very, very different organization, but apart from that, he was the Dean of Gandhi Krishi Vidyanike Agricultural University, Krishi Vignana University in Bangalore. And he is also known as a Kannada writer, very where is the botany, where is the writer, and at the same time you are a very good geographer. Like and history, geography, botany, and connecting Kannada literature. And he had created a strong Kannada readers. And he was also asking us, why you are calling me as a keynote address? I am not an artist. But that is not. We IFA consider all 64 kala except one. Chori karne ka mana hai. That one we are not taking. That is not good. So I am inviting Ganesh ji, and for this, the great success, I acknowledge DSCRT for their great support. And the media, especially from the Kalyana Karnataka region, the media has given lot publicity for our program. That is in Kannada regional newspapers, but they have highlighted the support from DSCRT and how IFA is working in the field. So I acknowledge everybody on the backstage, on the front stage, whoever supported us, and request Ganeshaiah to take over my session.
On several things, two of them I would like to state. Of course, they announced and it is taken off. So congratulations, and let us give them a big clap for this wonderful event. The second reason I think I should congratulate them is looking at the audience. It is said that the creator, whether it is evolution or God, has given the greatest responsibility to the woman than men of bearing the next generation. That is apparently because evolution also has seen that women are better take care of anything given to their hands than the men. And I see many women here. That means ours is in a better hand than it was so far. So I thought the ladies will clap for this also. And before I start my talk, I should also place in record a confession. Though Krishna and IFA has called me here, frankly, I am not an artist. I do write stories and novels and non-fiction in Kannada. That does not in any way justify me as an artist to be standing in front of diverse artists assembled here. So what I have done is to perhaps stitch together my own profession and my own hobby to the extent that I can make some justice to the occasion and to the purpose for which we are now joined here. In short, the purpose of today's meeting is art education, responding to the changing landscape. And let me first of all place in front of you what I understand as the theme of this particular topic. This meeting, as I understand, is aimed at art education, and this art education has to now also take care of the changing landscape that we are all facing in our society. And this changing landscape poses some challenges, and so how do we respond to these challenges in the art education? This is what I have understood by the theme of this whole program. But where do I stand in this whole thing? Believe me, as I told you, I am not an art educationist, nor I am an artist. However, though I am neither an artist nor an educationist, I believe that I am called here because I write in Kannada. In that sense, I am certified perhaps as an artist, and I teach science. So in that sense, perhaps I am an educationist. So all the elements are there, at least in terminology, if not by profession. And so I thought, let me now play around these three elements. What are the three elements? Art, that I know as a writer; science, that I know as a teacher; and because I am teaching science, as an educationist. Now if you link up all these three elements, the space that we create among them or amidst these three elements is the playground or the landscape in which I am now going to talk on. Now this landscape, incidentally, in the past 50 years to 100 years has been undergoing a lot of change, and the change that are undergoing is to be now discussed here because that change is demanding a response in the education. What is a change? Let me put in front of you. We all know that we have two sections of arts and science. And all of you also know that in arts and science there were separate subjects that were now enlisted for almost a century. Like what? Science considered physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology. Arts considered history, philosophy, psychology, economics, sociology, literature, and painting. But And this is important. But what is happening? You all know that some of the subjects are moving from the art section to science section. You all agree with that. History is no more arts. In fact, when I was doing my PUC, there was this subject called HEP, History, Economics and Politics, as arts. That was the BA or arts section. Today, history is no more arts, it is almost science. Archaeology is no more arts, it is considered as science. So also economics. If someone says economics is arts, no one would believe. It has become so much of an objective science in that sense. And sociology is also becoming more of a science than an art. So there is a shift from arts to science. And if you say, no, there are subjects like painting and literature and arts which are still in that, note that of recently, the changing landscape of the artificial intelligence is also impacting on the way we paint and write stories. In fact, the ChatGPT can write a story if you give 4 or 5 elements. So there is a landscape change in that also. AI is emerging as, if not a competitor, a rival to the creativity of the human artists, and so there is a changing landscape. In fact, the boundaries between arts and science are getting erased. Krishna was telling that we have to think about what is that we need to do in the next 2 or 3 decades. Please note that there is this great change going on of shift from arts to science, and that is in fact one among the most important landscape change that we need to consider, which I found in this meeting is not being considered. So my appeal to the IFA is, please do consider this tetronic or a kind of tremor that is going on between arts and science. There is a shift going on from art to science, and so this particular landscape is a changing landscape, and we need to now respond to that. How do we respond? I have a tentative solution which I am now going to put across for our discussion. The solution is, let us try to marry arts and science and do this marriage for the sake of teaching the kids or for the sake of education. So that shall be the main topic that I am going to discuss today. Can we marry arts and science and teach in our education? In other words, can we marry arts and science in education? That is going to be the central theme of my topic. And by defining this topic, I hope I am fitting myself into the main theme of today's discussion. Let me now go into some historical legacy. Can we marry science and arts? In fact, if you go back into history, you will see that there are fantastic examples of people having married arts and science. As an example, I'm sure some of you would be able to identify this cartographic map made by a famous artist. Can anyone identify? Yeah? No, I have actually tried to cheat you because this is not the full map that he wrote, and that is the full map. Can anyone identify? This map, a cartographic map, was actually, yeah?
Da Vinci?
Yes, this Leonardo da Vinci. Give her a big clap. So Da Vinci was also now developing cartographic maps, and now that she has leaked the secret out, Da Vinci has also now, written or has painted womb in the stomach of a woman and hands, what is a perfect hand, and even the skeletons. In fact, you will perhaps identify when I give the full picture of Da Vinci's paintings, and that is Da Vinci's painting of the anatomy of a growing baby, or the growing developmental stages of growing baby, and he has also indulged himself in the neural systems, vein systems, anatomy, physiology of human body, and what is the most perfect body of a human being. In fact, the hand that I showed is actually a part taken from there. And similarly, he has pages of skeleton structures of humans written. I only took this part to show you there. In other words, you see that Da Vinci has not spared any field, be it arts or science. He is known as a great painter, but he was also a great scientist. Now, why is that we have forgotten these models in our art and science education? As a matter of fact, he is not limited to that. He has also now given models of both engineering designs and also conceptual models. In fact, some of the conceptual models are being now used by the chemists for modeling the chemical structures. And some of the engineering diagrams he has written, no one even has decoded completely as to why he actually made those designs. To that extent, Leonardo da Vinci was not just an active painter, he was a draftsman, he was an engineer, he was a scientist, he was a theorist, sculptor, architect, and whatnot. So we have standing examples to show how arts and science could be married. But why is that today here there is no scientist at all, except me by chance? Now, are we not now having this as a challenge as to how perhaps we can bring these distant areas or disparate areas to see the possibility of mixing them in education? In other words, for him, for Leonardo da Vinci, there were no boundaries between arts and science. There were no boundaries between art and technology. Why is that we are having those boundaries? If some of you say, oh, Leonardo da Vinci is an exception, you can't have every other day Leonardo da Vinci's, believe me, there are within India also Leonardo da Vinci's. For example, I wrote about 7 years back an article on this man. For some of you who do not know him, he is BGL Swami. He is a botanist, and I call him Leonardo da Vinci of India. I also wrote an article in this in Current Science, almost emphasizing the same thing. But why do you call him Leonardo da Vinci of India? Unfortunately, not many know about this. Now, let me tell you and defend why I call him the Leonardo da Vinci of India. This is a diagram which is world known. This is a diagram he has painted using the Ganeshaiah's statue to depict one of the most controversial and developing theories in botany during the time when he was actually doing his PhD. I will not go into the science details, but let me just give you the essence of it. There was this man called Goethe, all of you know more than me. He proposed a theory of how the seeds within the fruits have evolved in the plants. You remember, any fruit that you eat, the seed is inside. So he proposed a theory of why seeds are within the fruits, and that theory BGL Swami conceptualized and brought it into a diagram. What is important is that that particular color diagram that BGL Swami wrote became a cover page for some of the textbooks written by foreign authors, and this particular diagram, the painting for that matter, is now copied and is available in several museums of botany because of its importance. Not only that, of course, BGL Swami was a great scientist, recognized world over. In fact, it's very simple for all of you to understand. You know, when the root grows from the ground and becomes the stem, there is an important change that happens inside. What is the important change? Let me show you what it is. Now see the phloem there. Phloem and xylem are the water and food transporting systems. The phloem there becomes outside in the stem. It is actually inside in the root. It becomes an outside structure in the shoot. How is that in the root where it is inside becomes outside when it becomes a stem was not known. BGL Swami for the first time broke this secret. And what is important is, being a scientist, he did not stop his science only here. He carried these diagrams, you know where? Onto the lehengas, to paint them on the lehengas and saris. He also now took these beautiful structures of the cross section of stems and roots onto saris. In fact, at that time when BGL Swami was teaching in Presidency College in Chennai, lot many printing press actually took his advice and they printed the saris with that. To that extent, he tried to combine what he what he found in science to the arts and technology of printing saris. Not just that. For him, arts and science were not different at all, because you see that he wrote number of books, both in English and in Kannada. This particular book, Hasiru Honnu, which has been translated to several languages and also to English, also won him Sahitya Akademi Award. It is a fantastic format of telling botany through in the form of the stories. It is a model that people borrowed later. Of course, he also now wrote some novels which have become actually movies in Kannada. What else you need for a person to now think that he is spanning over a wide range of things? And of course, in addition to that, he was a painter by himself, as I told, not just painter, a cartoonist. For most of his books, he wrote his own cartoons, and cartoons which are more satiric. He used to now use his botanical knowledge to create satire in politics and also in the general public. He was a great musician. He was also well known for putting rangolis. There is a very interesting story where there was a competition arranged for rangoli in Chennai, in the street where he was living. Early in the morning, 4 o'clock, the evaluating team came, 6 o'clock evaluating team came and selected one particular design as the best. It turned out to be one put by BGL Swami, not by his wife. So to that extent, he was a great artist by himself. He was a great scientist, great writer, painter, musician. He was a polyglot. He has published papers in Russia, Germany, English, and of course he knew Sanskrit, Tamil and Kannada. And he was a great historian. He has traced whether Tamil and Sanskrit have base roots common or have they evolved independently, and when did they evolve. He was a dancer. He was teaching to the kids dance in Mysore, and as I told you, the Rangoli expert. Am I not correct in comparing Leonardo da Vinci with BGL Swami? We have, but do we know about them? Why is that we have forgotten them? So if we now ask the question, can we marry arts and science? There are exceptional stories to say that yes, we can marry, and there are people who actually have succeeded in marrying them. But these are not exceptional. In fact, if you now create an education system where arts and science can be combined, maybe there may be more Leonardo da Vinci's. Maybe there are more BGL Swamis. These are exceptional because there is no education to teach both art and science together. Why is that we are running away by bringing the two areas of knowledge together? Why are we not promoting them in education? Purely because of historical legacy. And what is the historical legacy? As I already told, there was one field of knowledge called natural philosophy. Sometime somewhere in the West, that was divided into two sections called arts and science, and we are all victims of this division. We still feel that yes, arts has to be separate and science has to be separate. This dichotomy laid a bipolarness in our teaching. We never have any classroom where art and science is taught together. We have colleges of arts and colleges of science. We do not have colleges where in the same classroom both are taught because of this imposition that the historical legacy has put onto us. So the dichotomy led to bipolar teaching of arts, creating a lot of loss in the way we can perhaps combine arts and science. As a matter of fact, this is a myth that arts and science are very different. Now generally it is said that science is objective and arts is subjective. I do not believe in that. Science demands, it is believed, science demands proof and an evidence and logic and reasoning. You all agree with that? Generally it is believed that science demands proof and evidence and logic and reasoning, whereas art doesn't demand. Why? Because art is supposed to be imaginative, creative, as if scientists are not creative, and it is believed that art is personal and faith-based. Now let me show you with some examples after some time that all these are myths. There is reasoning in arts, there is logic in arts, there is faith in science. Before I come to that, to ask the question that and to address this issue that these are absolutely biased views with disastrous consequences to education. What is the disastrous consequence to education? Our education system is infected with this biased view that arts and science are very different and you can't bring them together. As a result, this society has created a kind of hierarchy between arts and science. Scientists always now walk with a high collar that we are better. Why? Because from the very childhood, if you are a little well-scoring boy, I wouldn't say intelligent, if you are a well-scoring boy, he is fit for science. If you are not scoring well, you take the arts. So this social hierarchy has been created, and this is a consequence of the dichotomy we have now followed through the history. Now this superiority complex imported into science has also other problems. It has affected sociology of education. Let me tell you, in Mysore University, during 1930s, the people who teach science were being paid more than people who are teaching arts. Do you agree with that today? Obviously no. Not only that, teachers who teach English were being paid more than teachers who were teaching Kannada. At one time, Kuvempu in fact was in a duality whether to take English course or Kannada course, and fortunate that he was forced to take to Kannada by one of his teachers. He was planning to take English course because he knew that it is going to pay more if he becomes the English teacher. This is the kind of social hierarchy and the problems that this has created in our society. So we need to now break this myth. How can we break this myth? Let me now go and show you how, in fact, that statement that religion is subjective and, arts is subjective and science is objective is not true. Now I take here as a representation of arts religion, because religious ideology is nothing but an art, as a matter of fact. Now the example I want to give you is from this guy called Thomas. He was a disciple of Jesus. He came to India, as a matter of fact, to preach Christianity sometime during 52 AD. He came to Chennai and he started preaching, and he spread this gospel of Christ, and also began to baptize people. He was fairly successful. However, and in fact, people who got converted by Thomas during that time are today also called as Thomas Christians or Marthomas. There is a group also in South India of this kind of Christians. Now then, as always, the religious conflicts began to emerge now and then. There was a religious conflict, and this guy was killed by a spear. People say it's accident, and people say no, it was purposeful. Irrespective of that, we will not go into that. He was killed, and in fact in Chennai there is a basilica at Mylapore, Chennai, after his death. So there is evidence to show that he was here, he baptized, and he was killed and all that. Point is not that. If some of you know Thomas, you know that he is also called as a doubting Thomas. Now why he is called doubting Thomas? I'll tell you. When Saint Thomas was, rather even before he came to India, there was an event that happened. One of their friends called Lazarus died, and he was put into tomb. Apparently, Jesus came back to life from his Christian situation, and he came back and he gave life to Lazarus and brought him back out of the tomb. This is a story. We will not question right now. However, when this Lazarus was brought back to life, Thomas was not there. Next day he comes there, and when he was told about the story that Lazarus was dead, he was put into tomb and he was brought back, and Jesus Christ brought him back. Thomas does not believe this. Underline my words. Thomas did not believe this, that Jesus came back and gave life to Lazarus. Thomas expresses his doubt. What is the doubt? Unless I see the nail marks in that Christ who came here and rejuvenated or resurrected Lazarus, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were, I will not believe that Christ came back and gave life to Lazarus. In fact, for this reason he is called as doubting Thomas. Look here, there is questioning of whatever happened by a religious man. He demanded proof that I want to see whether it is Christ or not. What is done in science? Demanding proof. In religion also, there is a demand for the proof of whatever someone was told to him. So don't be under the impression that only science demands proof. In fact, the very next day, Christ comes there, and Thomas puts his finger into the marks of the nails of Christ, and then he believes, yes, it is Christ who brought him back to life. Now, in other words, we believe that science demands proof, and experimenting and testing is the future of science, but doubting Thomas proves that it is not an exception to science, it's there in religion also. How about logic and reasoning? Generally, it is believed that science is more logical, arts is not, religion is not. Religion and arts is more of faith and personal, and it's imaginative. But let me give you another example. You all know about Bhagavad Gita. I don't need to tell the background and all. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna declines to fight and kill his own brothers and cousins. Krishna comes onto the stage and gives a series of logical arguments and converts Arjuna to go back and kill his own brothers and cousins. Arjuna was made to convince that yes, he has to go and kill his own blood relatives. What kind of logic it must have been, and what powerful logic it must have been to convert a man who didn't want to kill his own blood relatives to take arrow and bow and go and wage war and kill all those people. It must be a powerful logic and reasoning. The entire Bhagavad Gita apparently is one such logical argument. And of course, those of you who have read Bhagavad Gita would see that there is so much of logic and reasoning in that. In other words, logic or faith, logic is not very exceptional to science, it is also there in religion. Then we say, in science there is no faith, only in religion and arts there is faith. But believe me, science is based on the very foundation of one faith, several faiths for that matter. For example, scientists believe that science can offer solution to everything. Science can offer solution to everything, but this incidentally is an hypothesis that can never be tested. An hypothesis or a statement that can never be tested becomes a faith, and science believes in that faith. Not only that, for a long time was thought to be absolute, but after Einstein came, time has become very relative. And also, Aryan invasion theory, the theory that Aryans came from outside, is now questioned and people do not believe in that. So science also carries on with lot of faiths and beliefs which are now turned over again and again. In that sense, science and religion share each other's features. There is no difference between science and religion. If so, why is that we are having this conference here on education, only on arts education? We need to perhaps now think about this seriously, and my appeal to, in fact I have appealed it to scientists also, and you will see my own efforts later. I will appeal to artists also to keep yourself open. In education, in research and in information generation, please see the possibility of mixing arts with science. And I can also give you how near the science and arts are, incidentally and coincidentally also. Take the example of this great guy called Subramaniam Chandrasekhar, Nobel laureate, all of you know it. He is known for his discovery of what are called black holes. His theory is a foundation for discovery of black holes. He got the Nobel Prize. He is an Indian, stayed in America. He gave a series of talks, and all those talks were brought together in a book titled Truth and Beauty. Look at the title, Truth and Beauty. I don't know how many of you are from Kannada. Can I know how many of you are from Kannada here? Yes. You all know Bhairappa. You know Bhairappa's PhD thesis? Bhairappa's PhD thesis is Truth and Beauty. Look at a scientist, a Nobel laureate, writing a book on Truth and Beauty. Look at a Kannada writer who now has his PhD on Truth and Beauty. How coincidental it could be? It is not coincidental in my view. It is not coincidental because both of them are trying to now approach the same thing. What is that? Truth behind the creation, truth behind the universe, and the beauty of this creation and this beauty of this truth. If arts describes the beauty of nature, science is trying to understand the truth behind that nature. The truth and beauty are linked with each other so much that if you want to express your truth, you have to use the beauty of the media, and if you want to now understand the truth, you have to use the language of the media, the beautiful language of the media. I'll perhaps skip next two slides for the reason that, in fact, those of you who have read Kuvempu's, the Kannadigas would know, Kuvempu's Ramayana, there is a last chapter called Pattabhisheka. Virat Darshana. Actually, it's about Pattabhisheka. So, the father of all the authors comes and takes Kuvempu on his lap and takes him around to show the universe. When he was showing the universe, that invisible father of all the authors describes to Kuvempu as to how he sees the universe. I was reading this, and my daughter, who was doing PhD in cosmology during that time, about 8 years back, was hearing to that. And she opened from her thesis, remember, from her thesis, and showed an image and told Appaji, the description that Kuvempu is now giving in these 2 pages exactly recalls me the structure of the cosmos in a large scale, something like this. It is not to say that Kuvempu has discovered what my daughter was doing in PhD for her physics. It is only to show that independently, artists and scientists are trying to understand the universe almost in a similar way, though the path they have taken is entirely different. To that extent, there is a reason to believe that arts and science have the common ending and the common search for the truth. In other words, both seek the same end, the secrets of the universe are the secrets of the creation. But then why is that we are diverging? We are diverging because of the languages we are using. And if we can break these language barriers, perhaps it is possible to bring arts and science together. Why do I say language barrier? Now here is a sentence that I have borrowed from the scientists who define what is quantum theory. Do not try to understand this sentence. I only brought here to show off how complex the language is. What is that? Quantum theory, it holds that as soon as a potential exists for any object to be in any state, the universe of that object transmutes into a series of parallel universes equal to the number of states in which that object can exist. I am not understood. Nor would any of you also perhaps would understand. A professor of English also will not understand, because it is a language developed in science. Now look at a sentence that I borrowed from a lab report or a lab, practical record of a BSc physics man or a chemistry student. You can read that. Complex sentences. Pipette out a microliter of 1 molar natrium and add to the exothermic reaction mixture contained in the hourglass temporarily, It only means prepared 1M solution. That's all. This is the language we are using. To that extent, science is developing its own language more and more complex, away from the common man and the arts. But artists are no exceptions. They also have their own language. I'm sure 80% of the people here cannot make a meaning out of it, but it's a modern art. So arts is also developing a language of its own. So two are growing away from each other, putting a huge wall in between, and so we are now becoming separate and different. So there is in fact a need to now merge them. So I now propose that we have to marry arts and science for education. Don't kindly be only involved in painting and music and cutting papers and all that. Is respected, highly valued, but don't restrict to that. As I told, I have appealed the same to my scientist colleagues also. Don't restrict yourself to the labs. Go to the field and indulge yourself in arts. You will have a lot of things. I will now show you some examples how if you indulge, that is, as scientists, if they indulge themselves in arts, fantastic discoveries can be made. There can be any number of examples. With the permission of about another 5 minutes more, I'll give 2 examples. Examples for what? If as a scientist, if you involve yourself in arts, you can gain so much from the arts. One example I like to take is from temples of Somnathpur. Okay? Now, many of you would know that this is a Somnathpur temple. It was built in 1265 by a minister of Vaisala kings, and that minister is called Somanatha, and so that village is called Somanathpur, and the temple is globally well known for its artistic sculpture. Now, why am I telling this? In this temple, there is a structure, one of the most well-known science journals called Nature. Why? I'll tell you. Maize, incidentally, according to scientists, evolved and domesticated in Mexico in South America. It is not an Indian crop. America and India are separated vast across with the ocean by thousands of kilometers. However, maize was introduced to India from Mexico when, I will tell you. So it is native to America. There are evidences from 3,000 to 7,000 before Christ that it is a crop that has evolved and domesticated in America, and it was brought to India only when America was discovered by Columbus. And when did Columbus went to America? In 1498 or so. 1498 he went to America. So after that the maize must have come to India, but the temple was built in 1265. In 13th century the temple was built. In 15th and 16th century Columbus went. So if at all maize has come to India through Columbus, the temple should not have any maize at all. But the temple has maize structures 250 years before Columbus went to America. What does that mean? It means that, in other words, Columbus was in America in 1499, but Somnathpur temple was built during 1268. Does it mean that Indians brought the maize from America even before Columbus went there? Possibly. We don't know. Western scientists and historians tell us that Columbus was first to discover America. We all believe, and so we question how can maize be there in Somnathpur. Perhaps there was from Ramaya or Bhimaya from India who has gone to America and has brought maize to India, and so maize is there in Somnathpur temple. We do not know. In other words, this small observation of arts showed that there could be transoceanic contact between India and America. Now this opened up a large body of studies. People are now studying what are all other plants that are available in America, sculpted in our paintings in India. A lady called Geeta from Delhi University listed 52 such plants, suggesting that yes, possibly Indians and Americans knew each other. So it opened a large body of studies in botany. Historians searched for other evidences of contact between India or Asia and China and America. And now history may have to be rewritten. You see, it's now flowing back to the arts, if at all you consider history as arts. So indulgence by a scientist in arts changed the entire view about the way crops have moved across the world, and that eventually led to a different kind of history. Thus, it expands its scope of teaching in arts. Teaching science through arts is perhaps very valuable, and teaching and training artists on science also perhaps is. I guess I'm running out of time now. So I will not perhaps go through the second example. This is only to show why, if you want, I can now tell you later privately to some of you, why in all the photos we see, Diane is always shown less, shorter than Charles, which is actually not a fact. But why is she is shown like that? Again, because of the fact that some scientists went and studied the paintings of British birds and reasoned out why the palace in London always releases this kind of photos. Let me skip that. Last two slides. I have experimented this philosophy that I am talking to you today in my own writings. What I have done some kind of journey into arts, and I have experimented in trying to combine the vast range of subjects such as history, science, literature, archaeology, technology, and arts, and thankfully readers seem to have appreciated that very well. And what I did in the whole process is I viewed art through a scientist lens and vice versa. Also, when I was writing, I tried to now view the science from an artist's lens. As a result, I was rewarded heavily. My rewards I like to now simply list as a list of some publications I have made. I am now showing these publications not to boast, but to suggest to you that if a scientist goes back to arts and studies, there are benefits back to science itself. For example, I asked the question, what is Sanjeevani, when I was writing a book on Sanjeevani. And it turned out that I could filter down to 2 plants as to what the Sanjeevani could be. And that, of course, is now appreciated very much. Then, let me skip that. If you go to Somnathpur, there is this Vishnu statue, and the tourist guide closes the head and the thighs and asks you to focus on that vested belly of that temple, of the statue. Surprisingly, magic camera happens there. A cow face emerges there in the middle. Then he tells why. He says, because Vishnu was Krishna, Krishna was a Gopala, so he being a Gopala, the cow is hidden in his stomach. Now this example I used to teach a concept in evolution. I was so impressed by this magical emergence of a cow in the stomach of a statue. I used that to teach a particular concept called Panglossian paradigm in evolution in my course. Like that, Talakadu, I'm sure Kannada people would know, there is this curse called Talakadamma's curse on the Mysore kings, and the area has become very sandified, and I now approached it through science, and I found that the whole thing can be explained as an ecological disaster. It is no way a curse of any lady. So there is a benefit that you can actually get by applying your science into arts and by bringing arts into science, and so there is a benefit of all of that. This is my last slide. So it is possible to demonstrate that marriage can be done between arts and science. The demonstrations can be done through historical legacies. It pays back to both the fields of arts and science, and in my view, bringing those two fields and teaching could be a new model which I appeal to this whole audience here, and for that matter all artists, to think the possibility of involving science and scientists into discussions like this. And you have succeeded as a first step. You brought me here. So I think again a big clap to them. Big clap to them for this effort. So, and most important step, break the language barriers. please don't restrict to these barriers of language. Promote mutualism between scientists and artists. Inculcate in creating such curriculum. We can teach this only if we create a new curriculum. Unfortunately, we do not have any curriculum of combining arts and science in our education. You all need to know, perhaps think towards it. It may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen next year, but the idea, if it is seeded now, maybe it will take its time. Thank you very much.